Hey everyone, Stegar here, and welcome back to Hunterville. Towards the end of the last episode, we were working on this road layout, and today we're going to fill out about half of this with some houses, some shops, a chapel, a graveyard, and a school. So the first thing that I started off by doing here was placing down some of my houses. I'll go into that in a bit more detail later, but if you're new to the series and wondering what this is about, we're trying to create a city that's loosely based off things you'd find in Australia or New Zealand. Being from New Zealand myself, I kind of wanted to do something that was a bit closer to home for me than doing an American city, which I decided to do in my last project and sort of lost direction with that for a while, and it caused me to start this project. I mean, I'm still working on that project at the moment. It's called Fairview, and we're close to completion with that one, but today I've decided to come back into this city after taking a few weeks break from it and working on my Fairview series. And here I'm placing down a whole lot of houses, as I mentioned earlier, and with these ones I'm placing down roads sort of in the middle of the block and then placing these houses behind them and putting different houses in front of them. I detailed these all in the asset editor so that the front houses have driveways that lead through to the back houses, and because the houses are only 3 grid tiles deep, the 4th grid tile from the road will connect to the front of the rear houses and allow them to function like normal buildings. And right here you can see me just placing down a few fences in amongst this block because it wasn't quite the same as some of the other blocks where I have the fences already in the back of the houses. So there I was just going through manually and putting in some fences, and with these ones, since they're on a bit of a weird angle, I'm also putting in some fences as my pre-detailed houses are sort of rectangular and don't really fit in the shape all that well, so just doing that by hand. And yeah, putting down another fence here. As you can see, I think I go through in detail this house with some trees and bushes and various other things, and then we're going to move over to working on a BP gas station that kind of sits along one of the main roads in the city and is kind of at one of the main intersections of this whole area. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself a bit. I thought we were going to do that straight after this, but I'm just placing down a few trees and bushes along here to try and finish it off here. And now we're switching over to working on the BP gas station. I use these assets, I'm not sure who they're by, but you've got this separate sort of canopy area or roof or whatever you want to call it, and the main shop building is a separate asset that you have to place down manually. And I just placed down some expressway pillars to kind of form the supports of the backside of the main sort of roof area, and also putting down some signs so that it looks like a real gas station where you've got the prices on the big sign out front, and also just going through with the ultimate area fillers and filling out some of this concrete. I find the ultimate area fillers are a bit more useful than the surface painters since they don't conform to that grid. If you've used surface painter, you'll know what I'm talking about, and I also mentioned this in the last episode, but I want to mention it again because I don't think enough people know about these. Even though they're older than the surface painter, not many people use them, and they all seem to have problems with that sort of grid that snaps to a specific angle in the map and causes really jagged edges when you're trying to create things with the surface painter alone. Anyway, I also created like a little car wash at the back of that BP, and the cars can actually drive through there because I set up a road so they go through, and also there's another parking lot behind that. And at the end of the episode there's going to be a little cinematic showing how the cars actually travel through that car wash, but coming up soon I'm going to try something different and put some cinematics in the middle of the episode. For this one they're kind of a bit last minute, and I sort of want to do things differently in the future, but you'll see some right about now. So as I was saying before these cinematics rolled around, I added these in like on Thursday or something, and have just sort of decided to change things up and sort of break the videos up into smaller sections and break them up with cinematics. I mean, for this episode, it was recorded at like the end of March when the Sunset Harbour DLC was about to come out. I think it came out halfway through recording this episode, and I just kept the game open and did not close it, otherwise I wouldn't be able to play it. But yeah, so I recorded the time lapse a long time ago and added these in between cinematics in sort of only a few days ago, and I'm just experimenting with that idea, and it's sort of inspired by what City Wall is putting in his Mars episodes to try and break them up a bit. And yeah, I'm just trying that out, and also want to include that in my new series when I actually get to working on it. I mean, I'm going to probably work on that in the background and try and finish Fairview over the next like month or two, and probably reduce my upload schedule to only doing fortnightly, as I have quite a few assignments on with university, and also actually need time to prepare this new series, and I don't think I can manage to essentially record like 1.5 or 2 videos per week, as I can barely manage to do one right now. Like, I haven't even really properly played the game in like 2 weeks by this point. But yeah, that's just my thoughts and why I'm going to reduce my upload schedule starting from after this episode. And here you see me placing down more houses, and not on a grid. I mean, I'm trying to break this grid up a bit. I mean, a lot of cities, they'll have a grid, but it's not like perfectly gridded. Like, it might have a few sort of angled streets in between. Like, I was looking around Christchurch, which is where I currently live, and just looking at Google Maps there, and looking at how some of the streets sort of had unusual bends, just to kind of break them up. And now we're moving over to the like main road where all the shops are for the suburb, and I just placed down a Burger King on the corner there, as I feel like a lot of suburbs tend to have some sort of major fast food joint along them, and also placing the church at the other end of that street to just kind of set it into place, and we'll come over in detail around that in a few minutes time, and also work on the other side of the street. I mean, that Burger King asset kind of doesn't have the best model. Like, the Burger King is very square, like the writing on it. But here I'm also placing down this hotel on the corner, and I kind of like how it turns out and sort of sits on the corner there in between those two angled streets. The other one sort of leads off to where part of the downtown will be, but at the moment there's nothing really over there because we haven't built out there. And here I'm just putting in a little playground around this area so that I guess people from the hotel, like children and stuff, have somewhere to play, or just in general, like residents of this area have somewhere to go. And putting in more of these houses along the back, and just trying to fill out the suburb as best as I can with a whole lot of houses. You'll see there's a bit of variety in these ones, and I sort of talked about how they generally work earlier in the episode. And here I'm just going along with the ultimate area fillers again, using this really narrow one just to kind of put it in behind these buildings, and putting in some dumpsters now. I kind of found these ones in my asset collection recently, and before then I'd only really been using the vanilla ones, as they kind of fit with the other vanilla ones that were already on the back of the buildings. And here I'm placing down a whole lot of like shrubs and trees and stuff around this church, and trying to make it look relatively nice, because I feel like a church is a place that would be relatively well kept, since it's kind of important places for people to have weddings and funerals at. So I also decided to put a church here because Christianity is one of the main religions in both Australia and New Zealand, and I just kind of wanted to capture pretty much everything that I could. And up until this point, I've sort of forgotten to put churches into the city. I mean, I have plans of where I can put them relatively close to existing suburbs that I've already built. But here we're using these graveyard assets to create a large graveyard, and putting a fence around it and lining this area with trees too, and just making it look like relatively well kept, and removing some around the entrance here, so it actually looks like there's an entrance and it's been designed that way on purpose, and also putting in a parking lot here so that when people do need to go to the cemetery they have somewhere to park, and also providing disabled spaces for people that may know someone that's recently passed away and they might themselves be physically challenged or something and need that disabled space there so that they can pay their respects. And just placing down some trees around the edge here and lining it with sort of trees and stuff. And this house here, I actually hired some little cemeteries, crematoriums in it, and the hearses from those crematoriums actually drive out of that house and sort of act in a normal way that hearses do in the game, and just function and also hide that mechanic within like a building and stuff. And here just sort of finishing off along this corner with some houses and putting the fences around them, as again this doesn't really conform to the grid, or pretty much not at all, so I needed to do things by hand again, and you see me placing down some basic props like some planter boxes for a vegetable garden, as well as like a trampoline or a swing or something. And here moving over to placing down an elementary school and removing some of the props on it with Prop It Up, and I think I also placed down that playground, or it might be part of the building itself, I'm not sure. But also going along with the surface painter here. Here I don't think I really used those ultimate area fillers to fix up the jagged edges, I just left it as is. And also putting down a parking lot again here to sort of just provide for a place for teachers or even just parents dropping off their children or going for like parent interviews or something, to have a space to park. And I sort of leave the whole area that could be a sports field sort of blank, as I feel like in the summertime they're probably not caring to maintain all the lines and take down some of the equipment, as the school's not being used during the summer as the children are on break, and that is generally when the city is set, is in the summertime. So it makes sense in my opinion not to do that, and it also makes it a lot easier for me in terms that I don't have to detail it. And here I was just placing down some trees and things along the edge here. And now we've moved over to the area beside the railway line, and I'm just placing down these houses here. These particular ones that I'm using don't have the fences on the back, so I can put them in manually, as this is sort of on a curve, and I feel like having the square shaped houses with square shaped fences eventually start getting distorted as we move further around this curve. And I'm just lining up the front fences so that they line up, and we'll go through with a network fence later on and put that behind the houses so it appears that they're all finished and stuff. And just switching over a few here to try and pick the right house. And I think here is where I go through with the privacy fence by bad idea, and just go along the whole way and cut some of this out, because I mean it gets repetitive, doesn't it? And just placing down a few trees here along this little area where it was a bit of an unusual shape to try and fit a house in between. I probably could have, but it probably wouldn't have been worth it either, and I think these trees look relatively nice. And now we're moving over to a different area sort of on the other side of that road, and placing down a few railway tracks, and this will kind of serve as somewhere where overflow trains can go if all the platforms in the train stations are full. This is mainly for storage, and I put a platform down so that the train drivers would actually have a way to get off the train without like climbing up like half a meter or something. I don't know really how high the floors of trains are, but anyway, I was sort of lining up these railways so that they lead into that one railway line there. I don't think one of those actually connected, but it was just made to look as though it did, so that it all looks nice and seamless. And here I'm actually placing down the platform. I'm just using the concrete wall, and I'll sink that down in a second and put some ploppable pavement that I've converted to procedural objects on top of that to kind of form the main part of the platform, and slightly sink it below the top of the concrete wall so it appears as though the concrete wall is like the edge of the platform. And also putting some trees along here just to kind of fill in the space and make it look a bit nice and sort of hide this area behind something so that it's not so apparent when whoever's living across the street from here wakes up in the morning and just sees some trains there or something. I don't know. Maybe you want to see trains in the morning. I'm probably sure that a lot of people actually do that watch City Skylines videos anyway. And here just going along with this chain link fence and kind of sectioning this off because we don't really want people messing around with trains that are parked up for the night, and also going through with a whole lot of these little shrubs and things and filling up this whole area with just some greenery and things, as I feel like that was about the only way that I could really manage to fill up this area, as it's kind of otherwise going to be really bare, and using these weeds that I've used in some previous episodes, as well as some trees that I've set up with the forest brush so that I don't have to really think about what trees I'm using, just some that are of similar style and nice green tall ones, or relatively tall. I mean, the trees that I'm using in this city are actually quite short, but it's sort of to force this perspective that the whole city is quite big by using smaller trees. It sort of makes it appear a lot bigger than it actually is. And here I'm using this retaining wall to kind of mark the edge of this curve and just have some sort of support or something. I think I line up the heights with the walls off of those bridges and just sort of curve it around so that nothing's showing through, and I think I placed down some ploppable gravel on the other side to kind of cover up where there are some really minor little bits of the underside showing through and it just comes up as black. I'm not sure if I show that on camera though, as it probably wasn't that interesting. I might have just cut it out. And here I'm just filling this whole area up with bushes, and on the corner here also just putting some more bushes in, as I feel like this was somewhere where only really bushes could grow. So now we're in the final part of the episode, and in this part I just wanted to place some buildings along this main road here. I imagine that off to the left it would have continued across before some changes were made to allow the railway to cross over on that bridge that you would have seen in that cinematic shot just before. And here I'm just placing down like a little gym and a few other sort of industrial buildings. There might be like mechanics or just other random buildings that you might find, like selling glass or something like that, and as well as this little apartment building here, and putting a parking lot in behind it so that people that live there actually have somewhere to park, and just lining that up and moving the longitude so that I can actually see what I'm doing without the shadows. I think after this episode I'm probably going to reduce the shadow strength a little bit, just so that I can actually see what I'm doing and the shadows don't sort of make it so hard to see behind all the buildings and things. And here I'm just finishing off this parking lot with a few more parking spaces. These are the parking lot roads by Bad Idea. If for some reason you still haven't managed to find these, that's what they are, the parking lot roads by Bad Idea on the Steam Workshop. And just going through with another one of those chain link fences and putting it around the edge to sort of section off this whole railway area, as I don't really think it would be a good place for people to be going into, and just putting a whole lot of scrap and random things down here just to kind of make it look as though this is an area that's sort of been somewhat forgotten about, and just going through with these weeds and various other bushes again to try and finish off this little piece of the hillside, and more trees. I think this is pretty much all we do for the episode. I mean, you'll see in the cinematics, which are coming up fairly soon, that there's like one large block that still hasn't been filled in. I'm probably going to work on that in a future episode when I decide how like all of the terrain will work around that sunken down road that you've seen. And here just finishing off these houses. But we're almost at the end of the episode, so if you've enjoyed this one, leave a like, and if you're new to my channel and want to see more of my videos, subscribe and ring the notification bell. That way you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.